70 pounds up from that. Anyway, we've got some things to talk about today. It is Halloween night, so I want to talk about some of the most terrifying feelings in sports. I feel like that is apropos today. Also, I want to talk about Georgia some more, if you don't mind that I want to talk about Georgia some more, because this is the second week in a row. Florida some more because, now you got to replace Jim McElwain. Florida's athletic director has come out today and said, again, but let's start with Georgia. Because Georgia is very fascinating to me. This is the second week in a row that someone has come out and said that Georgia can't pass, right? Last week was a Florida safety. I forget his name already, but he said, Georgia can't pass. They can't pass. Jake Fromm's not that good. And I was saying last week, first off, he doesn't have to be that good, right? Like Jake Fromm's stat lines are not eye-popping. He throws anywhere from 7 to 14 passes and completes anywhere from, 7 to 12 of them. And he throws maybe a touchdown, 200 yards. These are not eye-popping statistics for the University of Georgia and the quarterback, Jake Fromm, who is a freshman, right? These are not mind-blowing numbers. He is playing a solid game. But even if that's all he's giving you, it's enough. Why would it matter whether or not Georgia can pass when Nick Chubb and Sony Michel are the running backs, right? And as everyone accurately points out, both of those guys are NFL caliber players. They are both professional caliber players. It feels like Nick Chubb's been there for 7 years, right? Like Nick Chubb is a grown man playing with children. He cannot be tackled by seemingly anybody, right? And the same thing goes for Sony Michel. Not only, because we always thought Sony Michel was the lightning to Nick Chubb's thunder. Sony Michel was the guy that was going to be faster. No, you can't tackle him either. That looks like a nightmare too. I wouldn't wish the job of trying to tackle Sony Michel on people that I hate. That is how difficult and painful that looks. We saw it last week. Sony Michel was running through Florida's whole defense, just running through the entire defense, seemingly unstoppable. And then once he ran through to the second level of the defense, they couldn't catch him, right? Like, it's hard to beat that guy in a foot race. So I'm looking at that game and I'm going, yeah, Georgia's doing what anybody would do if they had those backs and they weren't insane, right? You would be clinically insane if you had those two guys and didn't run them all game long. Like, we would have to lock you up and throw away the key if you had both of those backs on your team and decided you wanted to throw the ball. So I understand why opposing players want to criticize Jake Fromm, because this week it's South Carolina safety Chris Lamons who pointed out during an interview that Georgia's offense was the run game. He said, quote, when he asked whether or not they were concerned about the run or the pass, quote, the run, Lamons answered, they can't pass. And I understand where he's coming from in that. I do. Because when you look at Georgia play football, it's not so obvious that they pass the ball. Right? Like we said, last week against Florida, what was Jake Fromm? Jake Fromm was like 4 of 7. He threw 7 passes. He attempted 7, which is an unheard of in modern football. It's not so obvious that Georgia can pass, but I don't think you should get it twisted, right? Georgia doesn't run because they can't pass. Georgia runs because they're really blanking good at running. That's why they run. Because if you had the monsters in the backfield that they have, and you had that offensive line that they have, you'd run the ball a billion times a game too. Otherwise, you would be certifiably insane. And they should just fire you today. Right? Like, I mean, we're talking about the good year that Kirby Smart is having. Kirby Smart is doing a fantastic job of not outthinking himself. He's doing a great job of simply using his best players as his best players. And I know that a lot of offenses these days are pass-happy offenses. But if you can run the ball like they run the ball, you run the ball. Right? Like you use what is at your disposal. The reason why I'm not driving a Mercedes is because I don't own a Mercedes. If I had a Mercedes, I'd drive a Mercedes. If you had those running backs, you'd run them. It's not so obvious that Georgia can pass. But I think this is where people are getting this wrong. Because Georgia's not passing, they can't pass. If that's the opinion you've come away with, you are incorrect. Clutch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. I'm talking about Georgia. Can Georgia pass, and how good is Jake Fromm really? Jake Fromm is really good. He's really good. And you can talk about all the different intangible things that coaches talk about when they talk about Jake Fromm, right? When coaches talk about Jake Fromm, these are the things that they refer to. They talk about his poise, that for a freshman, it's pretty unnatural how poised he is, which I think is key, because if he had shown any signs of panic or being afraid, Jacob Eason takes that job back. The kid doesn't scare. Well, that's huge. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But his poise, they talk about his leadership abilities. They talk about the fact that the guys on offense listen to him. They follow his lead. To me, all that stuff is stuff I can't prove, right? I've never once heard a coach in an interview bash a young player for no reason while they're winning. Right? Like maybe you might bash him a little bit if you're losing. But I mean, I've never seen a coach go in on a guy that's winning, and they're winning. So I'm gonna take what the coaches say at face value a little bit, but mostly I'm gonna take it with a grain of salt because I think they're going to say positive things about their guy. He's their guy, right? So there's that stuff that he seems to excel at. But then there's the other stuff. To say that Georgia can't pass is a little crazy, right? Because Georgia leads the SEC in yards per pass attempt, 9.9 yards per pass, right? So, like, they're not throwing the ball a ton, but when they throw, 9.9 yards a pass. Jake Fromm has thrown 13 touchdowns, and he's been intercepted 4 times. He's got a quarterback rating of 171.86, which is really good. So even though they're last in the SEC in passing yards per game, their yards per attempt, really high. 13 touchdowns for this point in the year is really good. And when you consider the fact that Jake Fromm doesn't throw the ball that many times, that is an incredibly high number of touchdowns to have scored on that small amount of throws. Right? But this is where Jake Fromm is killer. And this is where actually you can start to see the tangibility of his poise, right? Where you start to see that Jake Fromm is actually a pretty poised young man. Because these are Jake Fromm's numbers for third down passing, right? Which is when they are not able to pick up downs early running the football. Jake Fromm is really good at picking up first downs when given the opportunity to pass on third. His numbers become stupid and video game-esque when you consider that he's passed, when you look at just the third down passing. These are the third down numbers for Jake Fromm. He's 29 of 46 on third down. He passes for 509 yards, 8 touchdowns, only 1 interception, with a passer rating of 209 on third downs. So basically, on the money downs, as third downs are often called, because that's where you make your money. Jake Fromm isn't just good. He isn't just great. He's elite in that stupid way that we have conversations about whether or not quarterbacks are elite. He's right there on third downs. And that's the thing that's got him in the game. Like, that's the thing that makes Jake Fromm special, that makes it so you don't really have to go back to Jacob Eason. Like, you don't have to figure out anything with Jacob Eason because you're like, look, we're just going to run the ball with Chubb and Michelle. And once we need Jake Fromm to pick up a third down for us, for whatever reason, this young man is beyond excellent at figuring out how to pick up third downs. It is incredible what you are witnessing with that young guy there. And that's the beginning, I think, of a really talented quarterback. Now, again, I don't know how you solve the conundrum of Jake Fromm versus Jacob Eason, right? I have no idea how you solve that. Because this kid's good. And I think Eason's great also. But, like, I mean, this guy's good. And he's good in a way that whenever they ask him to do something, he just does it. Right? Like, I think he would be good throwing the ball more if they asked him to throw the ball more. Right? And I know it's hard to do this with just a small sample size. Right? Like, it's easier to throw the ball when people don't expect you to throw the ball. But here's the thing. On obvious passing third downs, which are most of the third downs that they ask Jake Fromm to throw on, he completes. And here's the thing. He makes big plays. Even Will Muschamp had to admit, Jake Fromm not only has a lot of arm talent, but what he's very capable of doing is making big plays down the field. He finds his receivers. Okay, he gets accused frequently of throwing slant passes. Chauncey Gardner, the Florida safety, said anybody can throw simple passes. I get it. Anybody can throw a slant. Jake Fromm doesn't just throw slants. First off, Georgia has a lot of fairly complicated route combinations that they like to run, right? They like to run their receivers trips to the left or right. And from there is a dizzying amount of route combinations that you are asking a freshman quarterback to decipher. And what he seems to do is make the right play time after time. He looks off receivers. He goes through progressions. He doesn't just stare down a guy. And he makes deep throws, right? You don't get 9.9 yards per pass attempt just throwing slant passes. Jake Fromm is the real deal. The only reason why we're not sure is really because they don't have to run the ball. But I'm watching him throw, and there's an SB Nation blog. It's called Dog Nation. If you're a Bulldog fan, I highly recommend that you read it if you are not reading it already. Oliver Connolly is the writer that did a wonderful film room breakdown of Jake Fromm and how he excels on third downs. And it's pretty impressive to watch. But when you watch some of these passes that this guy throws, the ball location is perfect. He has that drop it in a bucket kind of accuracy. And when I watch him play, I am impressed week in and week out by his ability to make big plays, right? He makes plays in big windows, small windows, does not really seem to concern him. He makes throws when the pocket is collapsing. He makes throws under pressure. He's mobile enough, even though he doesn't really run the ball. To me, I like everything about that. He checks all the boxes of everything you look for when you're looking for a quarterback. He understands when a receiver of his wins a one-on-one matchup and is able to throw the ball down the field. These are not the signs of a guy who is a freshman. These are not the signs of a guy who is simply throwing simple passes. These are not the signs of a guy who just throws slants. And these are not the signs of a guy who can't throw. Right? These are the signs of a guy who plays on an offense that he doesn't have to throw. Right? Like, it's one of those things, too, when you watch the NBA, for instance, and I make NBA analogies because I've been watching the NBA for much longer than I've been watching any other sport. And I will say this. Able to see what Kobe Bryant was able to do after Shaq. After him and Shaq had their squabble and Shaq had to leave, that's when we saw the best of Kobe Bryant. Right? There was a lot of accusations of Kobe Bryant early in his career that, he was playing with Shaq and Shaq carried him to titles. And that's been debunked over and over and over again. Kobe was great in all of those runs. And if you watch a lot of those games, go back and look through those series, like Kobe was fantastic. But the thing with Kobe is there was only but so much you needed to do with Kobe because Shaq was so dominant. It was so impossible to stop Shaquille O'Neal for a stretch of why would you do anything else? Those easy points. Give the ball to the big fella. Give the ball to the beast and let that guy score. Right? Like the 2001 Lakers, Kobe was great. Shaq was greater. And the reason why is because he's Shaq. And we didn't really get to see the greatness of Kobe Bryant until afterwards. When you saw Kobe Bryant became the Mamba, which is a nickname, by the way, he gave himself, and I will never forgive him for that or let that slide. But Kobe Bryant became the Mamba. And at that point, he became the Kobe Bryant that we make synonymous with Michael Jordan. He became the Kobe Bryant at that time that we were like, this guy runs the league. We didn't really think of Kobe that way when he was with Shaq. We thought he was great. Don't get me wrong. We thought he was great. But we didn't think about him in that regard until after Shaq. Why? Because he had Shaq. Like, we're not going to think of Jake Fromm in the regard of this guy could be a dominant passer. This guy could be a quarterback that's got the mentality and has got the ability to take over a football game. This guy's a quarterback who can put you on his back and carry you to victory if need be. And the reason why we don't know this about Jake Fromm, even though all the numbers and all the other signs seem to indicate that that is something that he can do, the reason why we don't know this is because he doesn't have to. And why would you if you didn't have to, right? Why do I drive a Honda Civic and not a Mercedes? Because I have a Honda Civic and not a Mercedes. If I had a Honda Civic and a Mercedes, I would just drive the Mercedes. You always choose your best option, especially when you know what it is, right? Like that's part of the hard part of life is what's the best option for you? What's the best way to save for retirement? What's the best way to start a business? What's the best way to go about what to do in your life? Well, the reason why all that stuff is hard is because it's not obvious. But if you have a decision, should I throw the ball or should I give the ball to Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, who at this point in the season, because we are undefeated, I know for a fact no one has yet figured out how to tackle. What do? You give it to the guys that no one has figured out how to tackle yet. Right? Like it's the same thing I'm watching in the NFL with Jacksonville and Blake Bortles and Leonard Fournette. Though Leonard Fournette did not play last week, the point is, like, you know Blake Bortles can't throw the ball, but people haven't figured out how to tackle Leonard Fournette. You just keep giving the ball over to Leo over there and letting him do damage. Why wouldn't you? You'd be insane not to. Right? Like, that's the reason why people make bad decisions is because their choices aren't obvious. If their choices were obvious, then you just do that. You would just do the obvious thing. Most of you. George is just doing what's obvious. Like we could throw the ball. Like Jake Fromm could throw the ball and probably could be very successful. But like, why? You don't have to. You don't need to. Why would you ever? You know, and it could just be me. I'm a pragmatist. I just don't believe in doing unnecessary stuff. Like if you just don't have to and you really don't want to, like why? Running the football is easier. There's a reason why people used to run the football. It's because that was the easiest way. And then they changed the rules and made it harder on, or made it a more offensive game if you pass. It made it easier to pass. But if you have the kind of running backs that make passing irrelevant, run the ball. Run the ball. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, and NoogaRadio.com.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7. Sean Hannity, 25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. CBS Radio News. NASCAR, Bloomberg Markets, David Tulis, streaming strong at NoogaRadio.com. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7. Chattanooga Radio.
Goss Insurance. Yes, we are local. And no, we don't have an 800 number. In fact, our mobile numbers are on our business cards. We live, work, play, and worship in Chattanooga, and we would love to help with your insurance. Business, auto, home, life insurance. Call now, save money. Call Goss Insurance for all your insurance needs. Goss Insurance, 875-2500. 875-2500.
Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. News Talk Nooga Radio.
Okay, so Florida's got a job opening, and they need to figure out what to do to fill it, right? Because Florida football has been two things that Florida football should never be. Should never be. It's been bad, and it's been boring. And Florida football, so far as I have come to know it, should never be bad and boring, right? Like, and you can be either one because everyone has cycles. There are ups, there's downs, there's peaks, there's valleys. But you should never be bad and boring. Florida football right now is bad and boring. I complain every week that I have to watch Florida play. There is nothing on this earth that makes me more miserable right now than watching the Florida Gators play football. Besides, I root for the Redskins, so they make me more miserable. But outside of them, nothing makes me more miserable than watching the Gators play football. They're bad and they're boring. Right? Like, I watch Tennessee play football, and it's bad. It's awful, but it's not boring. I'll give you that. Tennessee finds very new, fascinating, and interesting ways to disappoint their fan base. There is nothing boring about that. Right? And the drama surrounding Butch Jones and everything else. There is nothing at all boring about Tennessee football. It's bad. Like, I wouldn't recommend that you just sit down and watch it if you're not a Vols fan. And I actually would recommend that you don't sit down and watch it even if you are a Vols fan. Boycott badness is all I'm saying. We're about to yank the leash on Butch, though. And that'll be even more interesting. Missouri's bad. They don't defend anybody. But they score so many points. It's not boring. I'll give you that. Missouri football is not boring. It's dreadful. It ain't boring. Right? Sometimes Vanderbilt football is boring. But it's not bad. When I watch them play, I'm not watching a bad football team. I may be watching a football team that doesn't have as much talent as other teams. That's true. But no, I don't feel like I'm watching a bad football team. I feel like I'm watching a very well-coached football team that is playing as good as they can and to the expectations that we had of them. Like, that's what I see when I watch Vandy football. They're not bad, but they're boring. It's not fun to watch Vandy play most of the time. Right? I mean, even if I do like Kyle Shermer, so what? You never know what you're going to get from a lot of schools, but don't ever be bad and boring. Florida football is bad and boring. Like, hard to watch. They don't play offense in a way that's interesting to watch. They struggle to score. They manage to score, but they struggle to do it. It's bad and boring. And Florida's athletic director has said today that's one thing he hopes to change. He wants to make Florida football fun again, which is not as catchy as Make America Great Again, but still, it's the same idea. It's the same idea. So, Florida football, where do you go from here? Because I've been reading all of these opinion pieces online, right? Should Florida go after Chip Kelly? Should Florida go after Dan Mullen? And I'm looking at it and I'm going, how is that possible? How is this possible? Should Florida go after Chip Kelly? Should Florida go after Dan Mullen? Look, I think both of those guys are talented coaches, and I really don't know if you could go wrong going after Chip Kelly because you hired Jim McElwain for offense, and I don't know if anyone's going to make an offense look more exciting than Chip Kelly. Will the offense score? Who knows? But they're going to look fun. I can tell you that. Chip Kelly is not going to play around when it comes to scoring points. That's a fact. The issue here is, haven't we done this enough in the SEC? Right? Like, haven't we done this dance enough where it's find one of the big name guys that's out there that we're not sure whether or not they even want to coach anymore. We're not sure if they can coach anymore because let's face it, Chip Kelly hasn't been in college football in a very long time. And when Chip Kelly was last in college football, his team was on the forefront, on the cutting edge of what a spread attack could be. When Chip Kelly decides to re-enter the world of college football, whenever and wherever that is, he's not going to be on the cutting edge of what this is anymore. Offenses all look now like what his Oregon offenses used to look like, and defenses are all aware now of what those teams can be. Now, maybe Chip Kelly has got some extra tricks up his sleeve. He is a very smart guy. And I think his intelligence is more suited to college football than it was to the NFL. But that being said, Chip Kelly's not on the forefront of this anymore. Chip Kelly's not on the cutting edge of this, right? It's like rap music. Look at rap music. When you look at a lot of guys that are great rappers, they're still releasing music, and the music's still pretty good, right? Like Nas still makes music, Jay-Z still makes music, and the music's still pretty good. But like, they don't run the ship anymore. It's these young guys, and you may not like them, right? Like, you may not be a fan of Migos, but they run the ship now. Even Drake's fallen off. The young, like, it's about who's on the forefront, who's on the cutting edge. And just because you're not on the cutting edge doesn't mean that you're good. But if you're talking about trying to figure out how to be successful, make sure you don't accidentally get a has-been. And I'm not saying Chip Kelly's a has-been, but I am saying he's not on the cutting edge of this stuff anymore. How successful is Chip Kelly going to be? I don't think that that's a layup. Right? And nor do I think the Dan Mullen thing is a layup. And you've heard me on this show. I rave about Dan Mullen like every week. I like the guy. I think he's a brilliant coach. I think if Florida hired Dan Mullen, that would be great. But like I said, haven't we done this dance before? Hired a coach from another team. Right? Like, what if we went outside of the conference and instead of getting a guy that's trendy, get some guy who we know can coach, right? I read an article today on The Big Lead, which is a USA Today blog. It's by Jason McIntyre. Me and McIntyre disagree about a lot, like just everything, basically. But here's one thing that I do see here from him, because I don't know very much about teams that are not in the SEC or the Big 12, because like I just don't pay that much attention to them. I watch a decent amount of Pac-12 games too. I'm not gonna lie, but the Big 10 and the ACC, I'm not overly concerned with usually. But that being said, McIntyre was talking about University of Central Florida head coach Scott Frost. How he's a former quarterback at Nebraska. He used to coach under Chip Kelly. And the most important thing is that he's proven that he can turn a ship around, right? When he first got to the University of Central Florida, they were 0-12. Then they went 6-7. Now they're 7-0. And I'm not shilling for Scott Frost necessarily, because I'm not going to stand here and lie to you like I know every coach in every school and who could be a good fit and where. I don't. I follow the Power 5 conferences, and if you don't coach for one of those schools, I really don't know who you are. But that's the thing. Reaching outside of your comfort zone and taking a risk on somebody who is younger, who may be on the cutting edge, right? Look, you can take a risk and the risk might blow up in your face. I don't think that that's necessarily a problem. Like, I don't condemn Tennessee for ever hiring Butch Jones. He took a risk on Butch Jones, on a guy that I thought could really coach, right? There were some red flags there. Anytime a guy shows up and he has a reputation for being a used car salesman, that's not a good sign, but it was a risk, and you've got to take those. And when it blows up in your face, well, look, you go back to the drawing board and you start over. But South Carolina hiring Will Muschamp, to me, I hated that hire. Not because I think Will Muschamp is a bad coach, but it was so safe. Yeah, let's just hire another guy who was an SEC coach. But that's what South Carolina does. Like, let's just go get Spurrier because he used to coach here in this league. I mean, I see it, but it's so safe. And so when it inevitably doesn't work out because, like, that guy can't really take you to new heights, then you have to start over, but you have to start over from being average. Like, you have no idea what you are. You have no idea what your problems are. At least that's the one thing with being very bad, is you understand what you are, which is weird. It's like the weirdest thing about Tennessee is that Tennessee is very bad, but at the same time have managed to be bad in a way that doesn't expose anything at all. Like, well, I still don't know what Tennessee is, but you're supposed, like, that's supposed to be the upside of being bad. Well, is at least I know what I stink at now, and I can fix it. And so, yeah, you're Florida. I would say take a risk. Try somebody new. Try someone at an FCS school. Try someone at a small, like, try it. Like, hire somebody good. I'm not saying hire anybody. Hire somebody good, but hire somebody that's not one of the 6 names that float out there, right? Like, I would be disappointed in Tennessee if they made a really hard push to somehow hire John Gruden. And the reason why that would be ultimately disappointing is this. Look, I like John Gruden. I don't know how good John Gruden would be as a head coach. John Gruden hasn't coached in years. He's not on the cutting edge of this anymore. And he can come back and maybe be successful. I wouldn't rule out that he couldn't be. But he's not on the cutting edge of this anymore. And this is a job where one of the key ingredients is innovation. You can't do the same thing that everybody else does, and you can't do the same thing that you've always done. Think about how the game has evolved over the years. You don't have a quarterback, you can't win. That didn't used to be the case. You used to be able to be what Georgia is now. And you used to be able to be that with backs that are a lot less impressive than Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. But then the rules changed. Now you've got to throw the ball if you're most schools. You just have to. If you're Florida, if you're one of these schools that's going to be looking for a coach at the end of the season, and I suspect Tennessee will also be one of these schools, and I suspect that maybe even Arkansas may be one of these schools, as well as A&M, and possibly even Missouri. And it's more of a long shot, but maybe even Kentucky, because for some reason Kentucky fans are uneasy with Mark Stoops. Can't tell you why. Can't tell you why. That guy's brought more success to that school's football program than anyone I've ever seen in my whole life. Can't tell you exactly why. But anyway, if you're one of these schools that's going to be looking for a coach, don't go down the same list of tired guys that we've all gone down. Like, maybe you hire Chip Kelly and it works. Maybe you steal Dan Mullen from Miss State and it works. But maybe you don't, right? Like, maybe it just blows up in your face because it's not a really big risk, right? Like, you're trying to be safe and it still blows up in your face. Then what was the point of doing the safe thing in the first place? Clutch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com, 92.7 FM. Just talking about Florida and what they should do moving forward. They want their football to be good. They want their football to be fun, right? Which is the opposite of what they are now. The two things you never want to be simultaneously, which is both bad and boring. You want to move away from that. Okay, well, they're trying to move away from that. But then why go safe then? Right? Because Dan Mullen's going to show up, and Dan Mullen's going to coach really well. Dan Mullen hasn't been, in his time, this marvelous recruiter, right? I remember, and this is for me, like, and maybe Dan Mullen is a better recruiter than I'm giving him credit for. I just remember being really annoyed with Dan Mullen like 2 years ago because Dan Mullen was trying to coach or trying to recruit 2 years ago. And he was at SEC Media Days going, hey, guys, check out my shoes. Don't you see my shoes? Recruits love the shoes. And what shoes was he wearing? He was wearing the Kanye West Adidas shoes, the Yeezys. He was just wearing Kanye West's shoe and going on and on and on about how recruits love shoes. Dude, nobody cares about your shoes, okay? And I just don't think, and I know that recruits are typically 17 to 18-year-old young men. I just don't think that those guys and the support structure that they have around them is so gullible as to look at Dan Mullen's shoes and go, oh, there it is. There it is. It's the shoes. It's the shoes. It's the shoes. I was going to go to Georgia, and then I saw Dan Mullen and his shoes. Got to go to Mississippi State now. Got to. No. Right? Like, if Dan Mullen is actually convinced that that is what recruiting is, like, that, it's not going to change. His ability to recruit is not going to change when he arrives at Florida, okay? If he arrives at Florida, should they try to hire him, and should he decide to go there? Like, that's not going to change. The fact that he's an amazing coach, that's going to be the same, but also the fact that this is a man that thinks that wearing Yeezys is going to give you an advantage in recruiting. And I understand what the world that we live in when it comes to college football recruiting, that you more or less bend over backwards to try and get the attention of any recruit. And it doesn't matter what you have to do. And you have to do all kinds of ridiculous things, whether you are trying to wear a mullet, wear Yeezys, you show up to school in a helicopter. Look, there's a guy that played for the University of Texas. He was an all right running back at the University of Texas, but he went to my friend's high school in Texas. His name was Malcolm Brown. Went to my friend's high school, and Mac Brown was still the head coach of Texas at the time. And Mac Brown showed up at this school with the whole Texas entourage. Why is he doing that? He's trying to get the attention of a recruit. And you make a giant show of everything to try and get the attention of a recruit. So I understand that you do what you have to do. But understand that nobody looks at your shoes and goes, that's what's pushing me over the edge. This Dan Mullen, he's a cool cat. He knows who Kanye West is. He wears the shoes. Come on, man. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's not gonna fix any of your recruiting problems. You go to Florida, if that's what you think recruiting is, like, that's going to still be your Achilles heel. You're gonna have to hire people around you who can really recruit. And maybe you do. But it's such a safe pick. And you know what Dan Mullen's flaws are. Why don't you take a chance on a guy who has an opportunity to make your offense fun? Now, maybe Jason McIntyre is right, and that's Scott Frost from the University of Central Florida. But maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's somebody else. Clutch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Now, I think the interesting thing to note here is that somehow Jim McElwain got fired before Butch Jones, right? Like, Butch Jones is having a much worse year than Jim McElwain has been having, right? A much worse year. Jim McElwain is coaching a football, was coaching a football team that was bad and boring. But you know what they were managing to do more often than not? We win football games and be in football games, right? Now, every score looked like an uphill battle for them in a way that it shouldn't look like all the time, right? Like, some of these some of these points you're scoring have to look at least a little easy. At least a little bit. But now, everything looked like an uphill battle. But at least they were scoring. Like, they were scoring and they were winning occasionally. At Tennessee, I don't know what you're going to do with Butch Jones, right? Now, he's got an opportunity to go ahead and get a win next week against Southern Miss. So that's nice. Tennessee's better than Southern Miss. They ought to beat Southern Miss. That's no guarantee that they actually do it, but they ought to beat Southern Miss. That really ought to be what it is, right? And I think the Tennessee football is going to be very fired up next week to try and stomp Southern Miss to get this bad losing streak taste out of their mouths. But understand that if somehow they lose to Southern Miss, Butch Jones will be out of a job next week, and Knoxville will riot if he doesn't end up losing his job. That is a fact. I don't know how it is that Butch Jones managed to keep his job longer than Jim McElwain kept his job, when you consider that both Jim McElwain was making more money and has a higher buyout than Butch Jones. But I think Tennessee's also taking the pragmatic route on this, right? Don't just fire a guy to fire him. Don't just fire a guy to make a point. If Tennessee is able to part ways with Butch Jones during the offseason and nobody's firing shots at each other, and Butch Jones is able to leave the university with his dignity intact, which I'm sure many fans don't believe that he even deserves that. But and I'm sure many of you would drive him to the airport yourself if they wanted to fire him today. But if they allow him to leave with his dignity intact, look, that's a signal to other coaches, right? We treat our coaches right here, even the ones that don't work out for us. To me, that's a good message to send. Dropping somebody like a hot potato, to me, doesn't send a good message. It doesn't. Firing a guy instantly does not send a good message. Now, there's a point where you do need to fire a guy in the middle of the season. If you think that he is being terrible to the point where every week the buzz around him and the negativity around him is bad for the locker room, bad for the fan base, bad for the university, and the negativity just continues to build and build, then yeah, you fire a guy, it releases the pressure of it. But for me, personally, because people get some closure to that earlier than they expect, really. But for me, I don't think that you fire a guy. I think you try as much as you can to let guys leave with their dignity, right? I've had friends who have had some terrible breakups with women, and the terrible breakups, and they wonder why, like, after they have their breakup, you know, why nobody else wants to date them. Like, dude, you had this awful breakup, and it was ugly, and sometimes it got public, you know, and stuff was happening on social media. Look, here's something new. Both of you try to leave with your dignity intact. If you can both leave with your dignity, that sends a signal to other people who might like you. Like, yeah, this person's going to respect me even if it doesn't work out. Like, people who have bad breakups all the time, that sends a signal to everyone. Right? Like, why do you think it is that, like, nobody wants to coach for the Cleveland Browns, apart from the fact that they're awful? Just dreadful. Like, they're talking about firing Hugh Jackson, even though they gave that man a garbage football team to coach. They fired their last coach, even though they gave him a garbage football team to coach. And it was a 1 year, Mike Pettin. They fired the other guy and in 2 years, and they gave him a garbage football team to coach. How you break up with people, how you divorce people, it matters. And how you fire someone matters. If you just fire people, and you are known for firing people in an embarrassing fashion, and it's public and it's awful, it sends a message to everybody that, yeah, they don't treat their employees well, because even if things don't work out, you don't even get to leave with your dignity. That can't happen. And to me, that's what that looks like when you fire a guy mid-season. When you start trying to pony up the buyout money and start calling a guy's agent in the middle of a game. In the middle of a game. Right? Now Florida's such an appealing job, and it's not like they have a track record of just axing coaches, so that helps. It's an appealing enough job at this point, you would still take the risk, right? Because it's one of those traditional powers. You would still take the risk on trying to coach at Florida. I'm just saying it's not a good look. And Florida has been good more recently than Tennessee. So Tennessee, to me, doesn't get the same benefit of the doubt when it comes to that. Go ahead, keep Butch on for the rest of the year. And then if you want to move on from him at the end of the year, go ahead and do that then. Firing him now is not about to fix any of these multitudinous problems that football team has. Clutch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com, and 92.7 FM.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
Power Hour News at noon and 9 being brought to you by Greg's Sandwich Works, featuring the best cuts of meats for your sandwich. Get $1 off your Tuesday taco salad. Just mention Nooga Radio. Greg's Sandwich Works, 6337 East Brainerd Road, Chattanooga.
As an independent agent, Goss represents more than 50 of the leading companies. Goss does the shopping and you save. Goss Insurance for your auto, business, home, and life insurance. 875-2500 Goss Insurance.
Hey, dude, check this out. Have you ever seen one so big?
Whoa, look at the size of that.
Look at this little itty-bitty one.
Wow, that's really small.
They have them big, small, and everything in between. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives at the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. We're talking about over 40 brands of knives, including Benchmade, WR Case & Sons, Booker, and all the Frost Cutlery brands. Now, Sam, you've been to the cutlery shop. Is it amazing?
Spectacular. The knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. They have knives, swords, kitchen knives, ammo, and reloading supplies, plus survival gear.
It's the knife shop at Frost Cutlery, open 7 days a week. Hey, girls, you're going to love this. We're going to the knife shop.
Hey, let's not tell them they have ammo and loading supplies.
The knife shop at Frost Cutlery opens 7 days a week. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives. You're going to love the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. The knife shop.
Mention Nooga Radio for 20% off.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. E.J. Pelton Company, 332-3339.
Cash, 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 and more cash. Watch it gush out of your TV. Rick Davis is on national TV. Wow. Golden diamonds, coins, and more riches. Rick's selling, Rick's buying, and he's on national TV. Watch him Wednesday, 11 p.m., right after the Judy O'Neill Talk Show. North Georgia Cable TV 265. You won't want to miss it. It's a mountain of cash, cash, cash. And it's catching the Hollywood spotlight. And if one day hasn't got your head spinning, how about a second? Rick Davis is on Fridays, Channel 12, 10:30 a.m., right before The Price is Right. You gotta see it to believe it. Wednesday, 11 p.m., North Georgia Cable Channel 265. Friday, 10:30 a.m. on TV 12. 2 big shows every week. Rick Davis Golden Diamonds. You know where it is. Brainerd Road, Chattanooga. Cash, 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 and more cash.
If I were a rich man.
Hey, Mom.
Yes, Summer.
I know what I'd like to do for Christmas this year. Take shoeboxes full of goodies to the homeless military veterans.
What would go into these shoeboxes?
Toothbrushes, toothpaste, dental floss, deodorant, chapsticks, shampoo, soap, hand warmers, hand sanitizer, socks, gloves, toboggans, small Bibles, blankets, snacks, and cough drops.
Where can people donate these items?
Alpine Crest Elementary School, Sonic on Hickson Pike next to Frontrunner, Chick-fil-A in Northgate Mall in Hickson, Greg's Sandwich Works, 6337 East Brainerd Road, and Nooga Radio on Hickson Pike.
When will we distribute the shoeboxes?
On November 10th from 11 to 12:30 and December 15th from 10:30 to 12:30 at the Community Kitchen on East 11th Street, downtown Chattanooga.
Please help us in donating these items for our shoebox campaign. No veteran should ever go homeless.
Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7. Sean Hannity, 25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. CBS Radio News. NASCAR, Bloomberg Markets, David Tulis, streaming strong at Noogaradio.com. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7. Chattanooga Radio. Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7. Sean Hannity, 25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. CBS Radio News. NASCAR, Bloomberg Markets, David Tulis, streaming strong at Noogaradio.com. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7. Chattanooga Radio.
Goss Insurance. Yes, we are local. And no, we don't have an 800 number. In fact, our mobile numbers are on our business cards. We live, work, play, and worship in Chattanooga, and we would love to help with your insurance. Business, auto, home, life insurance. Call now, save money. Call Goss Insurance for all your insurance needs. Goss Insurance, 875-2500. 875-2500.
Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree? Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. News Talk Nooga Radio. The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
Our hour news at noon and 9 being brought to you by Greg's Sandwich Works, featuring the best cuts of meats for your sandwich. Get $1 off your Tuesday taco salad. Just mention Nooga Radio. Greg's Sandwich Works, 6337 East Brainerd Road, Chattanooga.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. E.J. Pelton Company, 332-3339.
WBLZ HD4 Ottawa, W224AZ Chattanooga,
92.7 Digital FM 95.3 HD4
Chattanooga.
A deadly truck attack on a New York City bike path.
This was an act of terror.
Tech giants weigh in on Russian meddling in the election.
Foreign actors used fake accounts to place ads on Facebook and Instagram that reached millions of Americans.
This is the CBS World News Roundup Late Edition. I'm Pam Coulter. A man in a rented truck mowed down people enjoying a pleasant afternoon in Manhattan today. CBS's Matt Piper reports from the scene.
We got multiple casualties. This is a mass casualty situation here.
The area was packed with people enjoying a fall day along a popular bike path steps away from the World Trade Center. Then terror struck. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Based on the information we have at this moment, this was an act of terror and a particularly cowardly act of terror.
A lone wolf attack, says police. Sources say the driver of the truck, Sayfullo Saipov, ran it into the path, striking numerous people. At least 8 are dead, nearly a dozen with serious injuries. The 29-year-old suspect, who is in police custody, yelled Allah Akbar when he got out of the truck, according to sources. He was shot by police, taken to a nearby hospital. CBS News national security analyst Fran Townsend.
They'll certainly will do searches. They'll look for, did he have a cell phone on him or an iPhone? Does he have a computer?
It is Halloween. Many children in the area dressed for the occasion. The popular Halloween parade still set to take place nearby, with the mayor and governor saying they will stay strong and resilient. Matt Piper, CBS News, at the terror scene in Lower Manhattan.
New York Congressman Peter King.
This is the worst nightmare in that if this was a lone wolf, this is the hardest type of attack to prevent.
At a congressional hearing, officials from 3 Silicon Valley tech giants admitted Russia played a larger role in last year's election than they first thought. CBS's Bill Rakoff.
Facebook's general counsel, Colin Stretch, says 29 million users saw direct content from the Russian trolls, but
people shared these posts, spreading them still further. Many of these ads and posts are inflammatory. Some are downright offensive.
Twitter officials say some 2,700 of its accounts were found to be associated with the Russian trolls. Both platforms say they're working to prevent it from happening again. Bill Rakoff, CBS News, Washington.
President Trump is attacking the former campaign aide who's believed to be cooperating with Robert Mueller's Russia probe, saying he's a proven liar. And spokeswoman Sarah Sanders says he was just a volunteer, not a senior advisor, as some are making him out to be.
He was somebody that played a minimal role, if one at all.
Mr. Trump identified him as a foreign policy advisor at a meeting at the Washington Post in March of last year.
George Papadopoulos, he's an oil and energy consultant, excellent guy.
On Wall Street, both the Dow and NASDAQ up 28 today. Now this.
I'm Jay Farner from Quicken Loans. The rate today on a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 3.875%, APR 4.05%. But choosing the right mortgage lender involves so much more than just a rate. Only Quicken Loans has earned 11 J.D. Power Awards. No other lender comes close to that level of client satisfaction. And we invented Rocket Mortgage. It gives our clients a simpler, hassle-free way to get a mortgage completely online in minutes. No one else has anything like it. And our people, each one of our 17,000-plus team members throughout Detroit, Cleveland, and Phoenix provides absolute client satisfaction each and every day. So why would you go anywhere else to get your mortgage? Go to America's #1 online lender. Call Quicken Loans today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com for the best mortgage experience on earth. That's 800-QUICKEN.
Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
Holding a Halloween meeting with business leaders, President Trump said his tax reform plan will be a treat for companies, workers, and the economy.
It's a tax bill for middle class. It's a tax bill for jobs. It's going to bring a lot of companies in. And it's a tax bill for business, which is going to create the jobs.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer thinks the president's been tricked.
His advisors come in and tell him, oh, this is great, this cuts middle-class taxes. And one of the many problems with this president, he doesn't know the actual details of the things he's supporting.
More testimony at the sentencing hearing for the soldier who left his post in Afghanistan. CBS's Jim Krasula.
Testifying for the defense, Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl's squad leader described him as an efficient soldier who, quote, wanted to go out and get bad guys. Former Sergeant Greg Leatherman also said Bergdahl complained about the military bureaucracy and that his unit was not aggressive enough against insurgents.
You're listening to the CBS World News Roundup.
3, 2, 1. Chattanooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
An industrial accident at Shaw Industries has led to the death of one employee. We're waiting on a statement from Shaw, and a family reportedly has been notified. According to the Times Free Press, after multiple complaints from inmates about Silverdale Detention Center, Judge Tom Greenholz is investigating. He subpoenaed several officials from the detention center in 5 different cases over the past few months, hoping to explain why nonviolent inmates are complaining about medical abuses, including untreated broken bones, denial of prescribed medication, among other complaints. One woman telling Judge Greenholz in a letter that her prescription medication was switched around. Help wanted at the CVB, the Chattanooga Convention and Visitors Bureau. Bob Doak has announced his retirement, and the CVB is hoping to have a new president and CEO by February. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7 now.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7. Sean Hannity, 25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. CBS Radio News. NASCAR, Bloomberg Markets, David Tulis, streaming strong at NoogaRadio.com. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7. Chattanooga Radio.
You're listening to Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com, and 92.7 FM. Show is Clutch with Keon Rose. This is hour number 2 of the show. I've been talking about Georgia. I've been talking about the SEC. I've been talking about Jake Fromm. I want to get into talking about this college football playoff committee. They're meeting tonight. Okay, it's going to be on ESPN at 7:30. Going to be one of the more interesting things happening tonight. The World Series is the obvious most interesting thing happening tonight, and we will talk about that later as well as Alabama versus LSU, which is a very fascinating football game that's going to be happening this Saturday, and it's being completely overshadowed by all the bad teams in the SEC. Just like in life, bad things tend to overshadow good things more frequently. This is why every time you watch the news, only awful stuff is happening. It's not that good things aren't happening. Is that the bad stuff always feels way more important. So that's all they talk about. Because that's really all you want to know. Just saying. So before I get into more Georgia stuff, because I know that everybody just loves it when I talk about Georgia. Just thrilled to be talking about Georgia just all the time. I will make an NFL observation here. 2 NFL observations, and then I'll get right back to the college football. But one, last night, man, how bad is Trevor Siemian right now? Yeah, the Broncos built their team to withstand average quarterbacking. Average quarterbacking. They did not build their team to withstand bad quarterbacking, because nobody can build their team to withstand bad quarterbacking. And this is why I think it's important when you get an opportunity, and if you find somebody that you like in the draft, even if they turn out to not be good or great, if they're simply average, if they're merely average, especially if you're one of these teams that decided, yeah, we're building our defense first. If you're one of those teams, then guess what? You need to get at least an average quarterback. You cannot settle for bad. Now, here's the thing with Trevor Siemian is that they thought they had a guy who was average. But what you need to understand, though, is that as the season goes on, people get less accurate and throw the ball less far. There are very few people who remain accurate throughout an NFL season, right? Aaron Rodgers is an aberration. He's not real. Peyton Manning is a guy that the way that he threw the ball, Peyton Manning was never lasering the ball into places in the first place. He did have a strong arm coming out of college, but Peyton Manning was all form and technique, so he was able to stay accurate going deep into seasons. Tom Brady, for much of his career, was able to stay accurate going throughout seasons as well. Lately, he's been getting a little bit more loose when you start to get to week 8, week 9 in the NFL season. But then you're looking at a guy like Trevor Siemian, who didn't have a strong arm to begin with. Understand that if you are asking this guy to carry an offensive load for you, he can't do that. You can't ask that of him. That is not in his skill set. And while I think Trevor Siemian is smart, he made some throws last night. I saw them, and I'm like, wow, I've never seen a guy throw the ball like that in his whole life. Like, he is having trouble generating any kind of power. That is what it would look like if you or I decided to be an NFL quarterback, right? Like, even if any of us were capable of being athletic enough and having the mental capacity to digest all of that information and then regurgitate it out onto a football field, even if we were able to do that, most of us couldn't throw the ball convincingly all that far. Like Trevor Siemian right now is just looking like the dude on his couch watching the game. And at some point, if you're the Colts, you have to realize, like, wow, we are wasting a lot of talent and a lot of money because we've put all of our money on the defensive side of the ball. It's sad, is what it is. It's a little bit saddening to see like a team has picked a strategy and it's just backfiring. You need a quarterback in this league, even if that guy is just average. Say what you want to about old Peyton Manning. Old Peyton Manning was better than Trevor Siemian, and he was average. He wasn't bad. He had some games where he was bad, but he was mostly average. He's mostly average, and average was good enough to get to the Super Bowl. So if you're one of the people that wants to take away from Peyton Manning's final Super Bowl run, understand that you don't get to swap Peyton Manning for Trevor Siemian for the entire season, and I don't think for that playoff run, and reasonably come out with a Super Bowl. I don't think so. Lunch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Other NFL observation, Tony Romo's great. People have been talking about how the way that he commentates and that he needs to scale back on what he does. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Tony Romo is giving people exactly what they want. He's giving us specific insight into plays, and he's giving us the insight into those plays before they happen, right? The thing that I like about Collinsworth on NBC is that Collinsworth gives you insight into the plays, but Collinsworth tends to give you more of that after the play has happened. Romo is giving that to you before and during the play, which is incredibly helpful and makes the game more entertaining because now you feel like you understand, especially when you consider that the fans have a certain camera angle that the analysts are not privy to. Even if you were a fan and you could recognize what a cover 2 looks like, it's hard to tell when a defense is in a cover 2 or a cover 3 or a single high from your couch because you mostly just see the defensive line and then maybe a linebacker or two. That's all you really get. So with that being said, yeah, it's helpful to have all of that information. The thing that we do with people who do things differently is we criticize them and try and get them to change. But doing things differently, this is the way that I want sports broadcasting to be. This is the way I want play-by-play on TV to be. I want the color analyst to not only be the star, but to be the star by coloring in all that detail that we usually get after plays happen while we watch the replay before the plays happen. That's what I want. That's what I want. And Tony Romo has been exceptional at that. And I hope that we have more people trending in that direction because for me, that's supposed to be the advantage of having a former athlete in the booth. Right? Like the guy that explains stuff that I can't just tell by myself. Anyway, Clutch with Keon Rose here on 92.7 FM, NoogaRadio.com. Georgia, really, really good. Jake Fromm doesn't make you pay. And the reason is he doesn't have to, right? And I've been thinking about this and the way to describe this. And I think one thing about Georgia is this. I actually think that Georgia's the really rich guy that you don't notice is rich. Right? Like, he wears a nice jacket, wears nice clothes, but he's not wearing a tux all day, every day. He drives a nice car, but it's not a Rolls Royce because he doesn't have to. Right? Like, that's what it's like to have Jake Fromm as your quarterback. He's the nice addition to the team. We don't really see the value of Jake Fromm because Georgia doesn't need us to see the value of Jake Fromm. And the benefit of that is obvious, I would think, right? That if Jake Fromm is really good at throwing the ball, if Georgia is ever in a position where they need Jake Fromm to step up and make plays, he's still kind of an unknown factor. He's still something that you're not. He's something of an unknown quantity. We really don't know a lot about Jake Fromm's tendencies because there haven't been a lot to go on. The sample size has been small. And so all of these players of opposing teams, right, coming out and talking about Jake Fromm and how he can't really play and now he can't really throw the ball. Chris Lamons from South Carolina was asked during an interview today about which part of the game should South Carolina focus on trying to stop Georgia. And he said the run. They can't pass. Now, I think that answer is only half smart, right? Run when you played Georgia. Because if you don't focus on the run, you lose. 8 teams already have this as proof. You don't focus on the run, or at least if you don't manage to stop it, even if you do focus on it, you lose. That's pretty much what it is. But the reason why that answer is only half smart is the they can't pass part. I don't think that it's because Georgia can't pass. Georgia can pass. Georgia doesn't pass because Georgia doesn't have to. Georgia's the rich guy that doesn't show you all of his money, right? Georgia drives a nice car, but, maybe it's not a Bentley kind of night. So they don't drive the Bentley. Right? And those are the people we appreciate it more. Right? Like, there's a reason why people can't stand Alabama. One is that you know how powerful Alabama is, and you know in all the different ways that Alabama is powerful. They stomp out everybody. And so in a lot of ways, it's kind of hard to appreciate how great Alabama is because you know everything about them. You just can't do anything about it. We don't really know as much about Georgia as we think we know. We know they can really run the ball. We know that defense is impressive. We're not really all that knowledgeable on Jake Fromm. And so there's a school of thought or a level of thought that says Jake Fromm can't pass. Georgia can't pass. And I'm not so sure that's true because when you look at the numbers, and again, I understand that the sample size is small, but this is football we're talking about. All the sample sizes in football are small. We don't have that many games. We just don't. But here's the thing that I'm noticing with these numbers. One, Georgia ranks first in the SEC in passing yards per attempt with almost 10 yards per attempt. They rank first in quarterback rating at 171. And that Jake Fromm has thrown for 13 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, which by any metric is a good year 8 games into the season. And when you consider that Jake Fromm does not throw very many passes per game, right? When you consider he doesn't throw the ball that many times per game, it's pretty incredible. Look at the third down numbers for Jake Fromm, because this is where Jake Fromm really, to me, is impressive, is on the money downs, the third downs. He's 29 of 46. So over 50%, 509 yards, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a passer rating of 209 on third down passing. The guy is amazing, and I don't think that he's getting the credit that he deserves because of the volume. Because of the volume. But here's something that I have to ask of you, right? When you consider that he's a freshman, like he's been asked to do a lot, right? In some ways. In some ways, he hasn't been asked to do very much, right? They haven't asked him to throw the ball a ton. But when they're asking him to throw the ball on third down, that's to bail him out. That's to bail him out. And his numbers are not real. And here's the thing. It doesn't seem to matter what the coverage is doing. It doesn't seem to matter if he's throwing into a blitz, whether they try and trap him by faking a blitz and dropping into coverage, by pressing, by going off, by rotating safeties. Doesn't matter. His numbers are still amazing. And that's the crazy part to me. And then when you consider, like, when you actually watch him play, he passes the eye test. He makes the throws that you would expect him to make, that the ball jumps out of his arm, jumps off his arm, that the accuracy, deep ball accuracy, intermediate accuracy, short accuracy, he's got all of it. When you consider that he passes that as well, to me, I don't know how you can leave Jake Fromm anything but impressed. But also, if you're South Carolina, if you're anybody playing Georgia, but if you're specifically South Carolina, maybe leave the commentary of the quarterback alone. Last year, Jacob Eason threw the ball for 29 yards. He completed 5 of 17 passes. He threw 1 touchdown and was intercepted once, okay? So he was 5 of 17 for 29 yards. And Georgia won the game 28-14. They won by 2 scores. So, yes, you understand that Georgia can run the ball, but, they can really run the ball. They can run the ball at a level that we may not have ever seen in this modern era of football where everybody just trucks it up the field, right? This is blistering. Now, I don't know if college football is as copycat as the NFL, but you got to try to find a way to get you 2 of those guys. That seems to me to be a way to go ahead and win college football games, is if you've got a stout defense and you can really run. And look, Georgia's got a test coming up here soon. Auburn, I believe, in a couple of weeks. And Auburn is a similar football team when you look at it. A similar football team with a more experienced quarterback. And you look at Auburn and I go, well, that game's not going to be easy. That's going to be a real test for Georgia. I'm looking forward to that one in a couple of weeks. But I'm just impressed with Jake Fromm. I really am. And I think that he's being severely, severely underrated because the volume of his pass attempts does not seem to match up with someone who you would consider to be an elite quarterback. But I'm telling you that on the downs where he does throw, especially on third downs where I believe that is the most important down for a quarterback, especially on third downs, picking up these first downs are huge, and scoring touchdowns on these third downs are also huge. Everybody knows you want to run the ball when you get to the goal line. So the fact that they trust Jake Fromm to throw the ball at that point is huge. And I understand it's not obvious that Georgia is really good at throwing the ball. But don't mistake doesn't throw the ball with can't throw the ball. Those are 2 very, very different things. Clutch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. So the College Football Playoff Committee is meeting tonight, and everyone's been trying to predict the College Football Playoff Committee's prediction of who's going to be in the playoff at the end. Now, here's the thing with this College Football Playoff thing to me that I find fascinating, is that it's still supremely interesting, but they start doing these rankings week after week from this point on, but it doesn't seem to have much of a bearing on who ultimately winds up in and out of the playoff, right? But I think it is important because as teams fluctuate, right, teams win and lose and fall in and out of the playoff, I think it's good to have the transparency and to have this idea of what the committee was thinking all along. What are they looking for that causes them to move teams around? And it doesn't help you predict who's going to be in and who's going to be out, which is really what ESPN is billing this as. And it really isn't that. You can't predict the ending from this. Like we've learned this. And that was the mistake that I think a lot of members of the media made those first few years of the college football playoff, was we thought, well, they're doing these rankings every week, so this should have some bearing ultimately on the final week, on that selection Sunday where they choose who's in. The issue here, of course, is that it doesn't. It doesn't at all. And that makes sense. Like, how can it have any bearing on it? The teams that the committee thinks are good, just like the rest of us, the committee has to watch the games and then react. But it helps us understand their mindset. It helps us sort of understand what is important. When they say a certain team is in the top 4, they're saying something. Now, when it comes to the committee is just like any group of human beings. Human beings do what's in their own self-interest. And when human beings do what's in their own self-interest, for instance, the committee is going to play it safe with certain fan bases and with certain teams, I think, because nobody wants to be the person that goes, yeah, Ohio State doesn't deserve to be in the playoff if it's going to be really close between Ohio State and Penn State. Even though you could have made a very strong argument last year that Penn State deserved to be in the playoff over Ohio State, and it could have been a very strong argument. I thought the committee did the right thing. But you could make a strong argument that they didn't, and you would have a case. You would have a case. So I'm interested in seeing tonight, because what I want to know is how the committee thinks, right? Like, none of this stuff is an indicator necessarily of who's in, who's out. But I think it does matter, because we need to know how the committee thinks, because when you get to that selection Sunday and someone gets left out, and someone always gets left out, it doesn't matter how much you expand this thing by, someone's always going to get left out. I, for one, would like it to not be a surprise who it is, right? So last year, we were able to see that the committee did favor Ohio State a lot. So when Ohio State got in on Selection Sunday, I know a lot of people were disappointed. I wasn't surprised at all. That was very much in line with the way that they had been ranking the Buckeyes all season. So tonight, what we're looking for is mindset. Who's in, who's out tonight. But with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7. Sean Hannity, 25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. CBS Radio News. NASCAR, Bloomberg Markets, David Tulis, streaming strong at NoogaRadio.com. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7. Chattanooga Radio.
Goss Insurance. Yes, we are local. And no, we don't have an 800 number. In fact, our mobile numbers are on our business cards. We live, work, play, and worship in Chattanooga, and we would love to help with your insurance. Business, auto, home, life insurance. Call now, save money. Call Goss Insurance for all your insurance needs. Goss Insurance, 875-2500. 875-2500.
Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. News Talk Nooga Radio.
So with everything in life, your track record matters. Got a couple of stories that do that. We've got the idea that Florida, we'll see what Florida's athletic director is made of. And there is a history of his track record of hiring coaches. And you can say whether or not it's fair, but coaches are defined by their victories and how much they win and what they win and on what stages do they win, right? Like, that's how we define whether or not a coach is actually good. This, to me, is why is going to be fired at some point, whether it's going to be during the season or at the end of the season, because Butch Jones has not won a lot of games in conference. He has not won a lot of games in conference on the biggest stages, and he hasn't beaten the rivals. That, to me, is important, and I think that that's important in the SEC in particular. That will cost you your job in this league. For a few years now, and if you learn nothing, that is something that you learn. That you don't beat your rivals and you don't win games in conference, you will lose your job in this league. There is no patience for that, right? So I see it, And I go, oh, yeah, no, it's obvious. Butch Jones is going to find himself fired. Well, for fair or not, athletic directors are defined by their coaching hires. Because we treat athletic directors like all they do is hire coaches. That's not true. An athletic director has so many other jobs. Athletic directors have to raise money for the program. The athletic directors have to figure out if and when the program needs new facilities, whether to renovate or build something new entirely. The athletic director needs to figure out how the fan base is going to interact with the athletic department. Like, the athletic director job is a hard job. It's one that's difficult to do. But we ultimately define athletic directors, whether or not they do the other stuff well, on their coaching hires. The same way we judge coaches. Coaches' jobs include more than just winning football games. Coaches have to develop the character of young people. Coaches have to be complicit in the educational process somehow, making sure that their athletes also are good students, graduating guys, making sure that their future is set up, helping them if they have family problems, being there for them, helping them through a part of their life that's important as they learn how to be social people. That stuff is fine and dandy, but we don't ultimately look at a head coach based on that, right? Like, none of this conversation about Butch Jones right now has anything to do, and then for Jim McElwain for that matter, has anything to do with what either guy has done off the field. Because while that stuff is important and being terrible off the field can get you fired, just ask Hugh Freeze, that's not what we judge you on. We judge you on whether or not you can win football games. And when it comes to an athletic director, sure, we could judge the athletic director on a number of things that it falls under his purview and falls underneath his job. But ultimately, we judge athletic directors on whether or not they do a very good job of hiring coaches. Right? Like that to me is, and it's fair. It's fair because you know going in, if you're an athletic director, that is going to be the part of the job that people judge you on. But we do this with all of our leaders. We don't judge people based on how well they do their whole job. We judge people based on how well they do the job that we notice the results for, right? Like, we crush presidents. We do, right? Like, we're watching Trump just get stomped out by the media now. But listen, I listen to Hannity every day for the last 8 years. Hannity just was steamrolling Obama every day for the last 8 years. And before Obama, the media took on Bush. And before Bush, it was Clinton. We're hard on presidents, right? But we're not hard on presidents for how well the president does his whole job. What are we always hard on the president for? The stuff where we notice results, right? Everything matters. It all matters. Whether or not that person is presidential, whether or not that person gets along with our allies, all of that stuff matters. But if you promise to pass the law and can't pass the law, we'll kill you for it. If you promise to pass the law and pass the law and the law is not perfect, we'll kill you for that too. Right? And it doesn't matter which president you are. Because we only care about the stuff where we notice the results. Right? So if a president raises taxes, someone's going to complain. If a president cuts taxes, someone's going to complain. And that is just how this all works out for everybody. We only notice the stuff where it's, oh, the results affect us. Like, an athletic director could be really good. He could raise tons of money for the school, build new facilities, always be at a surplus. Every team in the athletic department has what they need as far as equipment. And he has 2 bad coaching hires, and we say that guy's a bad athletic director. Because all that other stuff, we didn't notice the results of that. Your whole legacy could be defined. So yes, Scott Strickland, Florida's athletic director, this is a test for him. This is a big moment for him, because if he doesn't hire the right coach here, that's a knock that he takes. Now, I don't know how Strickland is as an athletic director on other fronts, but that just goes to my point that, like, nobody really cares. We don't deeply analyze what athletic directors do. In fact, we don't even really notice athletic directors until it's time to fire and or hire somebody. That's the only time that we notice the athletic director exists at all. But what do you think he does in his office all day, every day? Think about when it's time to fire his next coach. He's got a million other things that he does. And being an athletic director is a tough job. I mean, it's hard in a way that you wouldn't believe. It's a very difficult job. And all we notice are the coaching hires, which to me is humorous. Clutch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. So, I want to get into some NFL news real quick, and I'm going to talk about the World Series tonight. Game 6, Astros trying to the axe here. Finish up this series. Justin Verlander set to pitch, I believe. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But quickly, Ezekiel Elliott has been resuspended again in what has to be the most bizarre. Like, at some point, I wish that a federal court would just be the last federal court. I wish a federal court would be the last federal court to decide anything, because I don't know how this system works. I need to talk to somebody with a legal background, so you're going to have to give me some time on that to figure this sort of thing out. But here's what I need to know is, how come a court in Texas says, well, Ezekiel Elliott can play. Then a court in New York strikes it down. Then a court somewhere else upholds it. I don't understand how we're moving all over the country on this. That I find deeply confusing. All I know is that Ezekiel Elliott is resuspended. And I don't even know how long that's going to last for. Like, I'm tired of covering that story with any level of finality, because the moment I say, well, that's it, he's suspended, he comes unsuspended again. And the moment that he becomes unsuspended, I'm like, that's it. He's unsuspended. He'll serve that suspension later, and he winds up being resuspended again. So I am trying to figure this out. It is dizzying and ridiculous. But it's insanity. It's insanity. I'm not entirely certain how all of this works, but I figure the NFL ought to let this thing go, right? They're going to get their suspension anyway. I'm not entirely certain why they're pushing so hard to have him suspended this year. Going to get the suspension anyway, because Brady served his suspension. And if Tom Brady served his suspension, Ezekiel Elliott, who, and no disrespect to Ezekiel Elliott, is an infinitely less likable person than Tom Brady. If Ezekiel Elliott is somehow capable of getting his suspension overturned when Tom Brady could not, that would be the miracle of miracles. Do you understand? Absolutely. NFL trade deadline, a little bit crazy. I have never seen this much activity at the NFL trade deadline, but this goes to show you, by the way, that a lot of sports are starting to look a lot alike. It's happening. The NBA looks a whole lot more like the NFL now than it used to. The NFL looks a whole lot more like the NBA and Major League Baseball. Only in baseball and basketball does the trade deadline really wind up being this gigantic day that everybody is worried about. Like, everybody's concerning themselves with the trade deadline. The NFL never used to be that way. We never used to really see tons of action at the trade deadline. Not really. Not really. But now we're seeing a lot. Jimmy Garoppolo traded to the 49ers for a second rounder and I believe another pick. I believe a seventh rounder as well. which helps out the 49ers figure out their quarterback problems. Because sure, you could wait till next year and pony up the cash to pay Kirk Cousins millions upon millions of dollars to be your very average quarterback, or you could just go ahead and get Garoppolo, who we believe to be really good, though I believe the sample size there on Garoppolo is not big enough for me to know anything. Garoppolo played 2 games. And we can act like Jimmy Garoppolo played a bunch of great games. Jimmy Garoppolo played 2 games. He looked good in the 2 games. Lots of quarterbacks are capable of looking good in 2 games. I want to see if Jimmy Garoppolo is the real deal. The 49ers give him the place to prove that. Bill Belichick couldn't hold on to Garoppolo. At some point, you're going to have to extend Garoppolo. And how much money are you really going to pay for a backup? Right? Like, I understand Tom Brady's old, but it's not like we've seen a decline in Brady. I understand it. It all comes apart at once. But you got to figure we don't know if we're going to be able to keep Garoppolo for very much longer. Let's get something for him, right? And people wonder, well, couldn't he have gotten more than a second rounder? I don't think so. There's not a whole bunch of teams trying to fight for a midseason trade for Garoppolo. I think it's important that the 49ers know that if they have a good quarterback, they can run their offense. They're rebuilding, and they're rebuilding now. And they just started their rebuilding process. They don't have time to waste. And they don't have the money to go out there and try and get Kirk Cousins. So this is it for them. I mean, I think it's a good trade for them, and I don't think it's a bad trade for the Patriots either, right? Getting more draft picks never hurt Bill Belichick. I don't think. So that's an issue there, right? Then the other one is that the Panthers trade away Kelvin Benjamin, which to me, that one is a little bit more concerning because the Panthers already struggle with that vertical game. I'm not sure I believe in Carolina's ability Christian McCaffrey and Devin Funchess should see their numbers increase. Of Kelvin Benjamin there to be a target, but Kelvin Benjamin's still a talented receiver. Yeah, sure. Struggled with weight stuff, right? And showing up to camp in shape and all of that. But Kelvin Benjamin's still a very talented wide receiver, and certainly you wouldn't just trade him away. Good this season anyway. And you just took a weapon away from him, right? Like that can't possibly work out too well if you're the Panthers, unless you're thinking to yourselves, you don't need him. Also thinking to yourselves, well, we're giving up on the season, which teams tend not to do in football until they're really, really done. And the Panthers are still very much in this. So I'm not entirely certain where it is for them. Right? Like, I'm not entirely certain what the deal is with the Panthers. But the trade deadline saw us with a lot more action now than we ever used to see it. Clutch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. And, of course, my last bit of NFL news, which is Andrew Luck has been shut down for the year. After the news that Andrew Luck was throwing again, Andrew Luck said he still felt soreness in his shoulder and will be on injured reserve for the rest of the year. And I think that the Indianapolis Colts may have ruined Andrew Luck, right? They might have gotten the best quarterback prospect we have ever seen since Peyton Manning. And ruined him through sheer incompetence, essentially. It's kind of insane how they mishandled this guy. They mishandled his injury. They mishandled his shoulder at a time when a lot of teams are starting to find their franchise quarterback. Now is not the time to be losing yours, especially losing yours to something that is preventable. Preventable in terms of you could have handled the situation with this guy's injury a whole lot better. You really could have. Right? And I'm a big Luck fan. I honestly think that guy can be great. Got to the NFL, and despite not having a ton of talent on a team, immediately turned the Colts into a playoff caliber team that they never built around him. They never protected him. And then once he got injured, and this is the part where I really have to blame the organization the most. Once he did get injured, they completely foibled the surgery and the rehab for this quarterback that is supposed to be their franchise guy for the next 8-9 years. Where's that going to? How do you botch that? Like, that's the one guy, right? Like, when you hear about teams having training camps, right? In the training camps, they're trying to get as much contact into these training camps as humanly possible. Who's the one guy that you can't touch in training camp? It's the quarterback. You cannot touch the quarterback, right? And it doesn't matter who your quarterback is. You can't touch Andy Dalton if Andy Dalton's your quarterback, and Andy Dalton's not great. Andy Dalton at this point is pushing barely good, and you can't touch Andy Dalton, right? If you can't touch Andy Dalton, how much more protective should the Colts be of Andrew Luck? I mean, this is crazy. I've never seen anything this stupid, foolish, and incompetent before in my whole life. You've got to be absolutely on top of it. And I just realized, like, I just used a hyperbole. That's not even true, because I'm watching the Philadelphia 76ers absolutely ruin Markelle Fultz. And I don't know what to do about that either. Like, I'm sitting there watching that and going, how is that even possible? But yeah, I've never seen a team do that with a quarterback. This is supposed to be your star. What with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Astros, Dodgers, Game 6 tonight, World Series. This World Series has featured many things. Lots of runs. In fact, breaking amount of home runs and runs scored in the history of the World Series. This game is featured at points excellent pitching. The games have featured drama and thrills. And I want Game 7 at this point because I'm greedy and that's what I want. I'd like a Game 7, please. But I'm not going to lie. The Astros are very much set up for this to be the last game. First off, Justin Verlander is on the mound. Justin Verlander this postseason has been absolutely horrifying. Justin Verlander, during the regular season, went 5-0, had an ERA of 1.06 and 43 strikeouts in 34 innings. Unbelievable already in and of itself. He's gotten 2 starts in the American League Championship Series. He had 2 starts. He went 2-0. He had a .56 ERA. He's done an incredible job in his start in the World Series. In Game 1, he did an incredible job in that game. He is doing an incredible job throughout the postseason, the regular season. And if you want to talk about a team, trade deadline, that has to be the team. Houston has to be the team, right? They made a very strong push for Verlander, and they were not the only team that wanted him. Texas wanted him too. LA wanted him too, actually. And they were able to get Justin Verlander, and he has been money since the day he arrived. Justin Verlander's worth everything. And I don't remember exactly how the trade all went on the Houston side of things, but he is worth everything that they gave up to get him. Particularly good reason right now, how Justin Verlander is not going to go out there and pitch one hell of a baseball game tonight. This is a man who has been the American League MVP. This is a man who ought to be the World Series MVP. Right? And I'm not saying it's going to take a miracle for LA to force a Game 7, but they're going to need a big effort from everybody, and they are going to have to overcome Justin Verlander, I believe, early in this baseball game, because you cannot let this guy get on a roll to the game. You are not about to hit anything. You understand? You're not going to hit anything if you let Justin Verlander get rolling. The only thing is, since he's gotten to Houston, all he's been doing is rolling. I don't know how you break him. I don't know how you get some points on him early to try and break him and break his mental toughness. That grit, and it's that toughness that has given Justin Verlander the career that he has managed to have so far. It's the fact that in big-time moments, in big pressure moments, Justin Verlander steps on the mound and is immediately a monster. And he is terrifying to have to go up against and hit against. And in a Game 6, with all of it on the line if you're the Dodgers, a must-win game for them, I don't know if they can hit Verlander. And I think that Houston ends up winning the series. I think they win the game tonight. Right? And I ended up picking him to win the series. I picked LA to win Game 1, but I just thought Houston was going to win the series. Because when I look at how Houston is able to hit and how Houston is able to score, and I didn't know that LA had this in them to answer back, but I couldn't take that away from them. But the pitching in combination with that is too much. And this is not even bullpen stuff, which is what you usually need to make some kind of a playoff run. Just good, solid starting pitching from the Houston Astros. Not very many people have been able to hit Justin Verlander since he arrived in Houston, and I can't imagine that changes tonight. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Remember, folks, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch, and I'll see you in 24 hours.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio.